Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to the Alliance Guys podcast. I'm your host, Jay Cal, and with me is the former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion, none other than the modern day hero, Kevin Douglas. Kevin, we've got a lot to talk about. How are you doing, buddy?
I am doing outstanding. It was a great holiday season, a lot of good wrestling to get to watch, and I thought the NWA was some of the most fun wrestling going on over the holidays.
I'm so glad you said that. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone who's watching. Now, this video was supposed to drop sometime last week. However, we're family men, so we've got business to take care of, and wrestling comes second. So we get these out when we can get them out. We appreciate you guys watching them when you do. But without any further ado, let's get to the NWA. Now, for this episode, this was I believe this was the 11th episode.
Yes.
And it was entitled, now I lost my note on what the show is called. So let me just peek here real quick on the old interweb.
J-Cal infamous with the notes.
Well, if I don't have the notes, we're going to do a lot of stalling. And so this episode was entitled Not Another Christmas Movie. And in fact, it was not a Christmas movie. It was a wrestling show. And so first and foremost, we had Trevor Murdoch coming out, breaking the news that he has signed a contract with the National Wrestling Alliance. A lot of people celebrated this. Of course, we're big Trevor Murdoch fans on this show. And I'm glad that they're acknowledging that his hard work has paid off and he is now a contracted wrestler for the NWA. By my counts, the people who have contracts in the NWA aren't as many as the people appearing on television, but I do believe that Trevor Murdoch joins another favorite, Thunder Rosa's, as well as the former tag team champions, the Wild Cards, Nick Aldis, of course, and I'll guess to say that Aaron Stevens is probably under some sort of contract as well.
All right.
Just guesses. There's not like there's for baseball, if I want to find somebody's contract out, I can just go to Baseball Prospectus or any number of sites and I can find out dollar amounts and how long and everything else. With wrestling, it's not public knowledge.
Oh, but I thought kayfabe was dead.
Kayfabe is dead and buried, nor is it. Who knows?
I always say, well, whenever you can tell me what's going on in conversations behind closed doors between Vince McMahon and anybody, then we'll know kayfabe is dead. But at this stage, we still there's still a whole lot of things that even as a former wrestler, and having been in those types of locker rooms, having been in the WWE backstage, there's a lot of things that go on that we have no idea how,
Absolutely.
why, or when, or what. So I would be willing to say that it's still alive and well. It's just maybe in a different form than it used to be.
And and just on that topic, right? So the WWE is a publicly traded entity. Okay, so if you go through those tax returns with a fine-tooth comb, you're going to find out what these guys make and what their deals are like. But you know what? No one's bothered doing that because it's not relative to producing television. So let's get to it. This interrupted the qualifying match between Ricky Starks and another favorite on the show with another favorite on the show, Eddie Kingston. Just a note about Trevor Murdoch. I'm sure everyone has heard us say this multiple times, but he was one of Harley Race's star pupils. So I do feel there's a bit of that good feelings for not just Trevor Murdoch and family, but for the entire NWA to have that lineage, that linkage, that connection, the legacy connected to old handsome Harley, the king of wrestling. So that's pretty cool. And personally, I hope to see a lot of big things for Trevor Murdoch in 2020. He's been one of the stars of the show as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see what this happens for him. But and then shortly after that, we get the Pope.
Oh, yeah.
The Pope makes his debut, and Elijah Burke, he was at one point commissioned to be the next big thing in the WWE as part of the new ECW, and obviously things didn't pan out the way that anyone had expected. But Pope has said he's looking for his next guy. He's looking for his next star. Zicky Dice thinks that might be him. And, well.
I think Pope set the record straight on that one.
Yeah, I think Pope Pope dodged a bullet with that one.
Yeah, I in terms of Trevor Murdoch, I just wanted to say just a quick, he's one of those guys to me, especially just having been around a lot of locker rooms and a lot of different types of shows and even work with the NWA. This is something that I would consider pivotal to any wrestling show. And those are guys that don't have to carry any kind of belt, don't have to have any major storyline going for them, guys that can just go out there, or girls that can just go out there and really just carry TV time, carry time on the show, anywhere in the show. And we've seen Trevor Murdoch do this. He's cut promos. Yes. He's wrestled for the world title. He's wrestled the question mark. He's been the opening match against a local guy, and he's excelled in every single role. And again, I think that's why you got to have guys like him under contract, because it's not always just about being in the main event or being in all the big money matches, but you need wrestlers that can carry any segment of the show at any time. And Trevor Murdoch has really shown that he can do whatever the NWA asks him to do.
Agreed. And you're like you said, he's fit very many different roles within the company already, and I think, like you said, that's always a positive. So, but moving on, we get another qualifying match, and we get Eddie Kingston, the guy who verbally bullied Joe Galli last week, and he's taking on Ricky Starks again. We're not unfamiliar with Ricky Starks on this show. Even before Kevin joined us, we were all pro Ricky Starks, and I think that sentiment hasn't changed.
No, sir.
He famously said that leather is his pleasure, but he prefers gold. And he made an exclamation point that night when he defeated Eddie Kingston to advance in the qualifying matches for the World Television title. Some of the things that I found interesting about this match was Eddie Kingston's never say die attitude and his really just bullish attitude, where he, challenged, just straight out challenged Starks to go ahead, kick me harder, kick me in the face, hit me. And, I haven't been in too many fights there, Kevin. I really haven't. I think the last one was probably, a few years after high school, and I never asked somebody to punch or kick me in the face, and I tried to avoid getting punched and kicked, actually. I was trying to be the one to do the punching, not so much kicking. But, Kevin, what strategy is that when you're in a match and you're demanding someone to punch and or kick you?
Well, I can say I want to say it was maybe my third match, second or third match, somewhere in there. It was really early on in my career, and I'm wrestling in a skating rink in a tag team match against the Necro Butcher and his tag team partner. So if you're familiar with the Necro Butcher, he was one of the most famous deathmatch wrestlers for his era. Been world traveled and all that, and we retained a friendship all throughout my career. And I'll never forget where I'm scared to death, and I have him, before Daniel Bryan, started doing the yes kicks, it was still a pretty cool move to, snapmare somebody and kick them, with a karate kick.
Right.
And so I snapmare Necro Butcher and kick him in the back, and he looks at me, he laughed at me, and he's like, come on. And he's just said, like, come on. And so I kick him again. He says, come on. And so I jumped around. Of course, I'm a young wrestler. I don't know any better. And I have an MMA background, So I flip around and I kick him square in the teeth. And he spits a tooth out. And he said, that's more like it. And whoa. I think that was the kickoff to a good friendship. But, in wrestling, you have characters. And I say characters, I will say men and women, unlike any person on earth. And in wrestling, it's the only place they actually have a place to exist, because there's just really no other place for them in society the type of person who will encourage you to keep punching them and keep kicking them, and knowing that they actually are getting something out of it. But
Right.
as far as this match goes, I have to say it was a major upset. I thought for sure I was going to have to come on the show and, defend Ricky and say, hey, you know what? It was a good run. But Eddie Kingston, I believe he's been a champion almost everywhere he's gone. And to
Right.
get a victory over a guy like Kingston, a clean 1, 2, 3 in 6 minutes.
Right.
I think that's huge momentum for Ricky Starks. And I think it kind of solidifies our campaign for him to be the underdog for this tournament. And I'm really pulling for Ricky, and we're hoping to get Ricky on the show at least for an interview within the next week or so. We do have a confirmation that he wants to, so maybe we'll talk a little bit after the show today and maybe put something like that together.
I like it. I like it a lot. Starkman Jones up in the Alliance Guys podcast. I'm all about that. So, I mean, again, I can't put a bigger exclamation point on it than you did. Kingston, well-traveled wrestler, is champion almost everywhere he goes. I don't know if I'm shocked because I really do buy into Starks. I really think the NWA has bought into Starks. I'm kind of surprised this was a qualifying match and not maybe a match that happened at the tournament. But, again, the NWA has their reasons for doing things. And, of course, when you pull a name out of a hat, that's what you get. So next up, we have Royce Isaacs, a member of the Wild Card, a member of the stable we now know as Strictly Business. And, he's there with a female, a May Valentine.
And can I interject here? Seeming like anything but Strictly Business. I mean, in a way, there was a part of me, and I know I'm just butting in here, but I was kind of excited to get to this segment. In a way, it was a really awkward segment, just because I haven't heard Royce Isaacs say a thing yet. But, I will say this. I do like to get to see wrestlers start to break out of their shell a little bit.
Right.
Kind of grow into that little extra space that they start to create for themselves when they start to kind of, again, break out of their shell. And so, as unrefined and as choppy as the segment was, it was kind of fun to get to see another side of Royce Isaacs. What did you think?
I agree. There were moments of it where I was kind of uncomfortable, and just because it felt very forced. And I don't blame either May or Royce for that. I just feel like there wasn't a whole lot of chemistry. As you and I both know, the more time people spend in the ring together, whether it be a manager and a wrestler or a valet and a wrestler, things start to happen. They start bonding. They start growing. We're not there yet with Royce and May, but that doesn't mean we can't be. Now, as somebody who's watched a lot of championship wrestling from Hollywood, Royce doesn't cut a lot of promos by himself. He's always had his manager, Jamie Iovine, out in Southern California. I'm not saying that he can't cut a promo. I'm just saying he hasn't been afforded the opportunity to cut a lot of promos by himself. He's always had a partner. So we'll see what happens down the road with these two. But you're right. It does create a new level to the character of Royce Isaacs. And, a lot of fans who first started tuning into the NWA programming around Crockett Cup era were introduced to Royce Isaacs and Thomas Latimer with not a whole lot of fanfare. So for us to get this pairing was interesting, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, and just to not to camp here too long, but just to kind of say, I remember a time in my career where I had, established without a shadow of a doubt that inside the ropes wrestling, I went toe to toe with Daniel Bryan and won. So technically, I felt like that was something that I could do rolling out of bed. But starting to break into promos and cutting promos, getting more comfortable with that, doing some training with a guy like Jim Cornette, that was the reason I really believe that helped separate me from some of the other wrestlers when I got into the National Wrestling Alliance world title picture. And initially it was a little uncomfortable, and I did have some promos that weren't that great. But as time went on, the promos became the thing that made me not just another wrestler. And so
Oh,
that
for
was
sure.
something I felt kind of good for. I mean, again, maybe this was not the time or the place to use television time for it, but hopefully we can see some growth out of Royce Isaacs, because in a team like the one he's on, you're gonna have to have some time where you can carry your weight in promos, because I feel like this team is gonna have the chance to cut some great promos, and it can't
For
just be
sure.
always Aldis doing all the talking. So I
Right.
want that's my last piece on that. I just felt like there was something there to talk about.
And I just want to just add a little caveat to that, and then we'll move on. Ric Flair cut the best promos, but not a distant, a very close second might have been Arn Anderson and Tully
Oh
Blanchard. All three of those guys could cut money promos and could put, pardon the expression, asses in seats.
yes,
So Royce Isaacs, if that's where he's struggling at in his game, and I'm not even saying he is, but if that's somewhere he can improve on, by all means, please add that element, add that character to him. So moving right along, so we get that promo, and it was kind of, like I said, kind of a little weird. Isaacs basically says he'll take on anybody, anytime, anywhere, and we get the Cowboy, James Storm, who we haven't seen since Into the Fire.
yes.
And he said to Aldis, "Hey, you're gonna make me be the old me." I think I quoted that right.
Yeah.
And he came out there looking for a fight, and honestly, Royce wasn't ready for it. And in some ways, it reminded me a lot of the match between he and Josephus. James Storm gets a second win on NWA Power, and I don't know, not a whole lot to talk about in that match. Your thoughts?
I'm going to go back and kind of say that this is an area where trying to rehash old style television wrestling has its faults. And that is that, quality matches, using all this time of the television show to build up to a match, and we don't really get a whole lot of anything. I just think they can do better, because we need to see a little bit more. I don't mind him walking out, right? Like, I get it, like, it's TV, it's not a pay-per-view. We're trying to pull you in to watch more shows. Like, I get it. We've talked about this at length, but give us some substance, because it would be fun to watch at least 5 minutes plus of Royce and Cowboy James, just to watch them have some wrestling. Because again, remember, it's wrestling, and
Right.
a lot of the best companies in the wrestling world today that are making the most noise are the ones that will give us some wrestling in the matches. And
Right.
one of the biggest complaints you're going to hear from fans all across Twitter land and Wrestler land and anywhere else is we don't get enough of quality in-ring stuff. And so, as much as I do love what the NWA is doing in terms of their feel, you've got to stay up with some of the stuff that is going on right now. And good quality wrestling, giving us more of that and then leaving us hanging, is going to make us want to watch more than not giving us anything at all.
Right. And I mean, you just hit everything, so I don't really need to put anything more on that. We're in agreement. That happens quite a bit on the show. Maybe I should start faking a false opinion just so we could battle back and forth here a little bit. So we get Dave Marquez back at the podium. Well, I mean, I guess he was the one that was conducting this interview, and a little awkward. And again, I had written down here, it was kind of awkward for whatever Mr. Isaac said to Marquez made Marquez giggle a little bit and said that was inappropriate. So not sure what's going on there. But then,
do we want to take bets on what he said?
No.
I
don't want to.
Me neither.
I don't want to lose our G rating, our PG rating. So the next thing we get is Eli Drake, and I always point to the camera when I do that because I feel like I've been programmed to do that. When Eli Drake comes out, so we talked about on the last episode the sore voice promo, the sore throat promo, and how money that was, and how great Eli Drake has been on the microphone. I'm not saying this was as good, but I'm saying it's at least as entertaining.
Yeah.
Old boy comes out a little bit intoxicated, maybe taking a little page out of Chris Jericho's book and enjoying a little bit of that bubbly. And, well, he was slightly inebriated, and he says to Marquez, "Hey, would you like a drink?" Marquez says, I'm working. And Eli says, "Yeah, me too." And then he proceeds to tell us that these are the shoes of a champion, and that this jacket are shoes of a champion. And everyone had a nice little laugh at Eli's expense. But again,
let's just call it what it was. The highlight of the show. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I'm sorry, but if you were live there for that had to be a blast, because that was just a fun part. That was probably my favorite part of the show, which Eli Drake typically is.
I had friends at the show, and actually one of them kind of gave me some highlights of what happened, and he just, in that highlight, he called it the drunk Eli Drake promo. And I'm sure live it was even better. But then we get Josephus back in his Santa Claus outfit, now singing Christmas carols, which Eli Drake rudely interrupted. But again, in the spirit of holiday season, I thought it was silly. I thought it was funny. It ate up some time, and B, it made for good TV. I thought it was
and again,
well done.
If you're gonna not have wrestling, have some good stuff like that. That's all I'm gonna say about it. It was fun. I like the choice of Christmas Carol, one of my favorites.
Good.
I enjoyed the segment all around. And again, I think this is something that what we all love about wrestling is that it's fun. There's so many times where it can be really intense and very serious, and it is a very physical sport. But at the same time, we can have a lot more fun. You're not going to see that on an MMA broadcast, or anything of that nature. So hats off to the performers during that segment. And again, I think this is part of what we're seeing. We've talked about this again at length. That we're watching the NWA grow. They're starting to find out the things in their programs that really work, and then they're hopefully figuring out some things that don't work as much. And hopefully we'll continue to see them grow and piece things together, but also at the same time, push out of the comfort zone a little bit and maybe transcend or innovate some things as well. But I love this segment. It was a lot of fun.
And speaking of out of the comfort zone, to me it was kind of weird and kind of neat to see Josephus singing Christmas songs. He has a nice voice.
I was gonna say he had a pretty good voice.
Yeah, I mean, pretty good pipes there from Josephus.
Well, no one doubts any. At least I don't doubt that Josephus is an entertainer and can entertain.
Sure,
definitely a weird guy, but again, weird with a little bit of control to it. Not weird to the point of like what's actually going on here. So I haven't seen a whole lot of Josephus. I do know that him and Tim Storm had a pretty good, pretty well-known match. But all in all, it made me want to see more of the show. That was the best thing I could say about that segment.
And I mean, that says it all, really, right? As fans digesting this product, whether live or watching it later on YouTube, after it aired, they want you to come back. They want you to keep watching the show. So whatever it is that hooks you, whether it be Josephus singing and Eli Drake acting silly, or a 5-star match, whatever it takes to get you back to that program. I mean, there's another wrestling promotion that I'm sure you're aware of that recently did a wedding angle, and that seems to be all that anyone's talking about that program. Mm-hmm. Now, for me as a wrestling traditionalist, I don't really care about that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, lots of people did enjoy it. Lots of people were watching it and talking about it. So, you hook them any way you can.
And sometimes you throw stuff against the wall and it sticks. And a lot of times when you see wrestling companies do things and you kind of scratch your head and go, why do they do stuff like that? Why are they doing that? It's to hopefully create moments like the wedding or like this where you're just not going to get this anywhere else. Professional wrestling is the only real venue that provides the type of stuff like we're talking about right here.
So, immediately following the Eli Drake interruption of the Christmas carols, we get our world's heavyweight champion, accompanied, as always, with Thomas Latimer, Royce Isaacs, and we have what, again. Oh, and Camille. And what we have is my daughter bringing me a root beer float.
Oh, nice.
Claire, come here. Wave to the camera real quick. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Hi.
Kevin.
You can't hear him, but he's in my ears. He said hi back to you.
Oh, I heard him a little.
Oh, you did hear him a little?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I mean, that's just adorable.
She joined me on my podcast on the live show the other day, and that was pretty cool.
We are family guys here at the Alliance Guys broadcast.
100%. I'd be nothing without my family. So
agreed.
And that root beer float was pretty tasty.
Oh, man.
Okay. see, you body guys don't always get to do root beer floats, but us fat guys can do it whenever we want.
Yeah, as I'm sitting here, I had to hire my own personal trainer recently. And yeah, so we're right in the throes of a 3-month deal. So I'm just, becoming immune to such things.
Oh man, I'm gonna leave this in here because I think that's good storytelling. All right. So next up, we have as I'm going here through my notes, we get Nick Aldis, and he's joined, of course, by Camille, Thomas Latimer, Royce Isaacs, the wild cards. We know them now as strictly business. They've got matching jumpsuits, and I think that's all right in my book because I love the uniformity. I love the camaraderie. I want to hate these guys. I want to boo them. I don't want them to be my favorites anymore. I want them to be the heels that they're supposed to be. For weeks and weeks, I've been telling you, and I've been telling the guys, Aaron Stevens was so special for the show because he was the only character that didn't fit into that gray area. He certainly is a heel. There's no doubt about it. Even when you put him with the guy who gets the biggest pop on the show, he is still a heel, and he still portrays himself that way. To me, that's always better than having a lot of gray area because then we have to make assumptions about who's what and who's who. Mm-hmm. Nick Aldis has made that very clear to us that he is no longer a baby face. He's no longer the hero we once thought he was, but he is a low down, no good, authoritarian kind of figure for the NWA. He doesn't have the ability to make matches, but he certainly can put together a formidable stable, and he's a force to be reckoned with.
Well, I really just think this is going to be, this is Nick Aldis at his best as far as I've seen so far. And again, I don't think we've talked about the flavors of ice cream, and you have different types of heel characters. Especially today, even if, again, we're doing a throwback type of wrestling show, even back then, you had, I always loved Arn Anderson and Ric Flair, and I was just the guy that liked to cheer for the bad guys. I don't know, but I still, and I like the Great Muta, and so I like Sting. So it wasn't, there wasn't to me when I was a fan growing up, there wasn't a rule book, and I think as we get a little older, we learn a little more about the show or learn about wrestling, we start to maybe think that it's supposed to follow some kind of rules. But as a whole, I think is what draws fans to watch is what's good for television. Again, of course, as long as it's not making me cringe all the time. And with Nick Aldis, I came on as not a big, didn't know much about him, didn't really, what I did know, I wasn't overly impressed. But he has really started to take, it seems like every week he gets a little bit better in terms of his.
Sure.
I'm just saying. I think we all know, especially from the Cody Rhodes match, that he can get the job done in the ring. And we talked about. We're kind of coming back around just from what I said earlier. But I think he has taken the challenge to grow into that wrestler that, whether it's in the ring or out of the ring, he's must-see TV. And Ricky Morton. I'm sure I think maybe because he's senile and just can't figure out what's going on. But he's not seeing, how he can't see what we see, and the growth that Nick Aldis is pretty much the staple right now of the NWA, which is, again, I got a little bit excited, and I'm not going to foreshadow too much about a certain individual discussing maybe something with Nick Aldis. But again, I think if we're talking about the top guys on the show, I put Ricky Starks as my favorite guy, but Nick Aldis and Eli Drake are easily starting to distance themselves from the rest of the competition. And I think what Nick Aldis is doing, he's doing it not just in the ring, but outside of the ring with his promos, the way he carries himself, the story that was told, putting this group together. There's just a lot to like about the guy right now as far as the NWA goes, and heel or not, you're gonna have to take that belt from him. It's not gonna be an easy thing to get.
No one's gonna take the belt from him. You know what I mean? They're gonna have to fight. Gonna have to go to war to get that belt. And when you're talking about Nick Aldis, and I think a lot of people seem to forget this, is that he was groomed for this, right? Like if you go back to a few years ago when he was still in Impact Wrestling, like this didn't happen by mistake. He was in there with the main event Mafia. He was with guys like Samoa Joe, who, for my dollar, is probably the best promo guy in the business right now when it comes to intensity. He was there with. I mean, he beat Sting for the Impact Heavyweight Championship. I mean, these aren't nothing. This isn't a guy they pulled off the street. This is a dude who's been groomed for this. And I don't. We talked a couple weeks ago, like, was he the right decision when they could have had. They could have had, they could have had Eli Drake. They could have had, gosh, I'm forgetting his name right now. Drew Galloway. They could have had Drew Galloway. They got Nick Aldis, and I think that was 100% what they needed. I think it's 100% what's his growth has benefited the NWA, and the NWA's growth has benefited him. And I think it's such a great symbiotic relationship. I think it's doing wonders for all parties involved. That's not saying I don't want to see Eli Drake kick his ass and take the title, but right now he is the NWA.
Yeah,
you could at me all you want, but Nick Aldis is the NWA. So, moving right along, we get the Rock and Roll Express again, and
yeah,
I really soured on both Ricky and Robert. And I'm honest, Kevin, I don't ever come out here and try to be somebody I'm not. I don't know all the booking plans. I don't know everything that's going to happen. I did get wrapped up in the excitement of the Rock and Roll Express. I thought it was so cool to see them win those titles, but I'm over it, and I've been over it since the pay-per-view. I think it was a mistake to let them keep the belts. And they're still on TV, and I don't understand. I think it's time for them to bow out. I'm hoping that a tag title match is made for the pay-per-view. Maybe we get the Pope and a new Outlaw Inc. to come in and take those belts. I don't care who wins the titles now. I just don't want them on Ricky and Robert anymore. I want those guys gone.
Well, and again, like and we've said this, and I've said this, like, if you're just tuning into the show for the first time, and I'll take full credit for the beginning of this, the turn here towards this, because I could see it coming, because again, that's what happens when you hot shot and you try to continue to kind of roll with something that was more just like a novelty thing. And that's why you don't do it. And you just would think, watching what we just got through talking about with Nick Aldis, a younger wrestler in the prime of his career, taking the National Wrestling Alliance seriously, and growing into something special. Why do the wild card not still have those titles, and why aren't they on the same trajectory as a tag team that Nick Aldis is as a heavyweight champion? And the Rock and Roll Express could have accomplished everything they've accomplished. Of course, in my opinion, aside from actually winning the titles, but they could have done everything that they're doing right now, got their pop, gotten the nostalgic feeling and all that, and it actually would have been better had they not won the titles, because they're really exposed for what they are, old, out of shape, past their time. And again, we wouldn't be having this conversation had that not been an issue. Had they, done the right thing themselves and said, "Hey, no, this is probably not the best thing for the business."
And I don't want to change too much of what I'm saying here, because I am very much over Ricky and Robert, but there was something special about them winning those titles, and I know you hate it, and I'm not playing devil's advocate here. I'm just sticking to my guns.
Well, we
It
can
was
have
special.
a disagreement at some point.
Sure, absolutely. And I think it was a unique moment, a special moment, and the fans went home happy. And it maybe might have got a few more eyeballs on the product, but it shouldn't have lasted this long. And I'm, Lagana knows I love him. Billy Corgan, maybe he doesn't know I love him, but he took a selfie with me, so I figure he knows that I respect what they're doing there at the NWA. But I'm so over these guys. And then it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have all the spoilers, but it feels like they're building to a Ricky Morton Nick Aldis match, and I don't want to see it. I don't want it to happen. If that's what they're building to, I don't want it. I pass on this one. I feel like you might feel the same way.
Actually, I'm going to disagree. You know what I want to see? I want to see Nick Aldis expose Ricky Morton for the old, out of shape, past his prime. Get your bleep out of the ring and know your role and do your part. I want to see that. I want to see that happen. I hope Ricky Morton hears the show because I don't really care what you think about me. I've held the same, I like I said, if I'd ever got the chance, I would have put you in your place in the ring. But the truth is that I'd love to see it happen either whether it would have been back then or right now. I'd love to see Nick Aldis. Nick, if you're listening, which I doubt you are, but if you are, you know what? Forget all the pleasantries. Put that old man where he belongs. Show the world what a real world champion does when they get in between the ring, and make him wish he never took that match. That's where I'd be with it.
So 2 things. Number 1, that was very much old school Kevin Douglas coming out right there, ladies and gentlemen. Number 2, I take it that you hashtag stand with Nick Aldis.
Well, if he's gonna take the time to have a match with Ricky Morton, make it memorable for everybody, and beat that old man completely beat that old man out of the ring, beat him out of the business. Good riddance. You're a legend. We love you. Goodbye.
Wow. I don't know where to go from there. Yes, I do. We have a women's tag team match. And again, we get Alison Kay. Correct me if I'm wrong because my notes are a little fuzzy here.
Come on, let's talk about this match. I really did like this match. So go ahead.
Okay, good. So it's Alison Kay, ODB, and Ashley Vox against Marty Bell, Thunder Rosa, and Mileena. I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm gonna say this. I think Marty Bell looked a lot more improved.
I thought this match was one of the better 6-man female style. Like, I felt like it was a good match as a whole. Yeah. I smashed and trashed Mileena for how bad she looked the last time I saw her wrestle. I want to say it was at the pay-per-view. I thought she was much improved this time. I thought she looked a lot more athletic. I thought her timing was a lot better. I thought she looked a lot more like the wrestler that I got in trouble for criticizing on Twitter, because I got a lot of feedback, a lot of pushback for criticizing Mileena on the Into the Fire pay-per-view. But in reality, I'm just being honest. If it's good, I'm going to say it's good. If it's not, I'm going to say it's not. And again, I thought Mileena was much improved. I thought the timing of the match was good. I thought it was hard hitting. I thought there was a lot of tags. There was a lot of back and forth. ODB, she makes me smile every time I get to watch her.
Right.
I thought Ashley Vox looked a lot more aggressive, looked a lot more like she belonged in the match. Again, like you said, Marty Bell looked crisp. It just as a whole, I was very pleased with the match as a whole for a 6-man tag match, considering that we haven't gotten to see a lot of good quality. And again, not that the women aren't good, just the positions they've been put in to have good matches. I felt like they were just given just a straight match here, and who, regardless of the finish or who won or storyline or any of that nonsense, I just thought it was a good women's 6-man tag match. And so I just hats off to the women for just going out there hitting hard, a lot of crisp wrestling in there, a lot of good ring positioning in there. for like a technical person that likes to watch the details. I just thought there was a lot of things to like about that match.
And I maybe I shouldn't say this because I don't want to draw the heat of the Mileena supporters, but I think they did a good job of limiting her exposure.
Yep.
And they used her in the right spots. And to me, I applaud all parties involved. You just said that's the best she's looked since she's been in the NWA. And I couldn't agree more. But I think that was done by design by some very crafty female wrestling veterans. So my hat's off to them, of course. But we both thought it was a good match. And then ultimately, the big swerve, if you will, is that our girl Thunder Rosa is not going to be facing Alison Kay.
And you might see what I'm calling my shot here. I'm going to call it like you would in a baseball game. This is my call. I think this is the beginning of Thunder Rosa's babyface turn. I think eventually Mileena is going to end up becoming jealous of her, rightfully so, because she's just not nearly as good. Past her prime, not nearly past her prime as Ricky Morton, but past her prime. and I think that Thunder Rosa, this is a good chance for, and again, I don't know how the show's going to go. The NWA has been notorious for proving me wrong with their storyline swerves. So for all I know, I could be totally off. But this could be a good direction, a start of a move towards Thunder Rosa really kind of standing in the place of the fan favorite that she really is, in that almost unstoppable momentum that she's had since her debut.
And it's I see the seeds that you're seeing as well. I see something happening too. I think, and this kind of goes with the last episode that just aired yesterday, and I don't want to get too much into that right now, but I do want to say this. I see the seeds that they're planting, and I think I agree with you. If it's just you and me talking, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen, but we'll have to wait and see. And then transferring from this to that, we get Tim Storm talking about Mama Storm, getting really emotional, seeing a different side of Mr. Tim Storm, talking about his mama and her never say die attitude. And when his dad left, leaving them penniless, Mama Storm kept working. Mama Storm worked till the day she was 75 when she retired. And she keeps wondering when Tim's going to hang up those boots. And, well, he ain't ready yet. What did you think of this promo from our former World's Heavyweight Champion?
I'm Tim's a friend of mine, and
sure.
We've been on the road together. We've known each other since my very beginnings. We did TV in Arlington, Texas. When I was 20 years old.
Wait! I gotta ask. Did he have the outlaw look with the mustache and the ponytail when you first started working with him?
Yes, he sure did.
And
then eventually I think he had his partner with him, who's a longtime friend of his. And so, I know the picture that they're painting here.
Yeah.
I just don't dig it.
Sure.
I just don't, but I do like when Tim gets a little bit loud and he gets a little bit ticked off. And I just think right now, I love Mama Storm and I love my mama, and I'm probably in the same category. I can relate, but this is not the time for that. This is the time for Tim to be on a war rampage, be standing in that place of, look, you know what? I'm a former world champion, and I was one of the stepping stones to put this company where it is right now. I would just like to see a little bit less emotion in the term of sympathy, and a little bit more focus in terms of winning matches and really making a run. If you want to make Mama proud, get that belt and hold it over your head.
Woo! You are speaking to the choir tonight, man. I look at Tim Storm, and I know that there's a lot more gas left in his tank. And this is, what's the easiest way to phrase this? I know how you feel about Ricky and Robert.
Yeah.
this isn't a Ricky and Robert situation.
No.
Tim Storm looks like $1 million. Tim Storm can still get out there and wrestle a match.
Yep.
Tim Storm looks great. And until recently, you know, he was certainly one of the top threats to Nick Aldis at any given moment. I can't wait to see what he does next week on the TV title tournament. I do want to see more intensity. I do want to see more ferocity from Tim Storm. I understand why they're doing these promos, but like you, I also think that this isn't the guy that wants sympathy. He doesn't need sympathy. He's not here for us. He's here for himself. Yep. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, he knows what his mountaintop is.
Yeah.
And there's only one man stopping him from getting there.
And let's be honest, the window's closing, you know?
Sure.
And the time is now. And the time for sympathetic, you know, feel bad for me promos is over. The time is to honestly, whether it's in the back or however, what, you know, there's a lot of ways that things can happen in professional wrestling. And,
right.
And some people need to get some elbows in the face, whether it's in the back or out on television time, which sometimes magic can happen out there as it can anywhere else. And it's really time to shove everybody out of the way and say, you know what, right now is my time. I know Eli Drake's got a lot of things going on. I know Marty Skrull is the thing. I know that Nick Aldis is the champ. But you got to, at some point, you got to be willing to make some waves. You got to be willing to take some risks. And I think this is the time right now for Tim Storm to do that. Otherwise, he's going to find himself in the middle of the pack going, how did I get here?
And I mean, the quickest way to get there is to win this TV title and to make his claim, hey, I've got my own championship belt now, and I am the best, and you can't beat me. Now, you got to remember, they're back and forth, right? So Tim defended the title successfully against Nick in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood back in September of 2017. Fast forward to December of 2017, Nick defeated Tim for the title at CZW. Then, first episode of NWA Power, the last match. They've only had 3 matches. You know, on any given Sunday, the better man can win, but the better man isn't always the guy that wins the match, and the better man isn't always the guy who gets his hand raised at the end of the match. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this saga with Tim Storm. And personally, I'm hoping to see him win that TV title and bring some prestige to that new championship.
We could be looking. I'm still not giving up on my swerve that he ends up with Aldis' crew, but carry on.
Whoa, that would be interesting. Main event time. And I don't know how I feel about this main event because it's only given 6 minutes and 5 seconds. I understand the point of it, but your main event is supposed to always be like the match of the night. You're supposed to give it lots of time to envelop and tell a story. The 6 minutes and 5 seconds, you don't get that. We get a former 2-time NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, a former 2-time NWA National Champion, Colt Boom Boom Cabana, one of the show's favorites. I'll say it. We all like Colt Cabana here on the Alliance Guys podcast, and he takes on the question mark, probably, you know, the prodigal son of Monrovia, but also the adopted son of Atlanta, because the people in Atlanta love this guy. And I get it.
The prodigal son of Monrovia. Oh my God! If you don't go ahead and just get the rights to that and make a T-shirt, that was great. Carry on. I'm sorry, but when you have a moment, you gotta have a moment.
The guy brings out his flag and everyone salutes it, and I'm just thinking, what is going on here? This is America, for crying out loud.
Oh, exactly.
So we get the question mark versus Colt Cabana, and
yeah, say it. Just say what you got to say. I'm pretty sure we're on the same. We feel the same way about this too.
Look, Colt Cabana should not be doing the job for the question mark. It just shouldn't be happening. I get it. There's a time and place for everything, and there's a story being told. I don't understand the story. I was there in Atlanta. I got a kick out of the question mark. He was fun. But this is the epitome of beating a dead horse. Yeah. How much more are they going to push us? Now, I know I'm in the minority. I know Jaden and D-Cam were in the minority. Early on, they had nothing to do with it. I will admit that I enjoyed the silliness of it. I enjoyed the fun of it, and I still do to an extent, but beating Colt Cabana,
Yeah.
it doesn't sit well with me. It just doesn't. And I don't Colt Cabana should be right there with Tim Storm chasing that World's Heavyweight Championship. Colt Cabana deserves better than 6 minutes and 5 seconds in the main event on this episode. And I'm fine with Zicky Dice, doing the job for the question mark. I'm even fine with Caleb Conley doing the job for the question mark. This didn't sit right with me. I didn't enjoy it. The question mark didn't cheat to win. He won cleanly. There was no
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have much more to say than that.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna kind of go back to my thing about the Rock and Roll Express, and this is something that, and again, this is not going to be the exact same kind of comparison, but you're going to probably catch a theme here. And in wrestling, we have a term, it's called hot shotting. When you do something one time to get a reaction, and the more you do it, the less reaction you get. And the less credible the entire industry looks when you do it constantly. And so, and so again, Rey Mysterio beating, I think it was Kurt Angle, and for the world title at WrestleMania, that was a moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a moment in time, but you don't do it every year. You don't have it happen constantly. And by the time he's done it 5 or 6 times, you just go, well, when was the first time? And what? I don't even, it's the law of diminishing returns. And
100%.
And what you're going to get, you're getting it right now with the question mark. I could have told you this was going to happen early on. And again, this is the same kind of stuff that I just wonder, there are times when I go, man, is the NWA smarter than I think? And then there are other times I go, or maybe they're just lucky, or maybe the talent is the one out there doing the stuff that's good. And they're just kind of, doing their best to not screw it all up. And that's what the question mark stuff really kind of makes me scratch my head. And I know they're going somewhere with it. I know that I'd like to think that there's a ultimate end to the question mark story or whatever they're trying to do with it. But at some point, you're going to kill a lot of the things that you've already built.
Right.
And I think you're seeing that with a guy like Colt Cabana, who we both are big fans of. And again, I don't mind a guy who may be a little bit on the back end of his career,
Sure.
building up younger guys. And I feel like that's where Colt kind of is. But God Almighty, if Colt's on the back end of his career, where is the Rock and Roll Express, and why are they the ones winning titles and Colt's doing jobs to the question mark? These are the kind of booking things that just make me scratch my head. I'm not against the question mark. I think it's fun and it's funny, but at some point it needs to stay where it belongs in the kind of the shtick category, because it's starting to move over into the category of guys that can really work and really do some business, and it's making it all. It's going to make those things look bad and make the entire league look hokey.
And I think to everything you're saying, look, there's mileage to be made here, right? I don't think. I know that I'm in the minority. I know that you're in the minority. That there's a lot of people who love this gimmick, love the character, love this whole spiel, and that's great. It's perfect. That's fine. Like I said before, wrestling is meant to be for everybody. We're supposed to have different flavors, but not at the expense of really a link to your past. Because yes, Tim Storm was the World Heavyweight Champion when Billy Corgan purchased the NWA, but Colt Cabana beat Adam Pearce to be world's champion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute. This is a different time of history. Colt Cabana is, sorry to steal the term from you, Nick, he is the national treasure of the NWA. Mm-hmm. Colt Cabana has been around the block. And I mean, not just through the Adam Pearce years, but even predating stuff. He was a part of the Mid-Atlantic wrestling times. This isn't what you want to do with Colt Cabana. And I'm not saying Colt needs to be on a pedestal by any stretch, but why waste his talents and his abilities in a match like this? Mm-hmm. Again, if the TV title is going to be an important title, then by all means, Cabana should be involved. But Cabana should be losing to somebody like Ricky Starks.
Yeah.
Not to the question mark.
Yeah.
He should be losing to somebody that's going to benefit for that rub. We don't know if the question mark is going to be here at the next pay-per-view, the next 6 pay-per-views. We don't know.
Yeah.
So it does leave a bad taste in my mouth. And again, I don't even dislike the gimmick. I just think that this isn't where he needs to be.
Yeah.
And if you want to use a question mark to have him go on a spree of just beating the crap out of enhancement guys, do it. Great. Build up to that title match. Don't put him in a tournament and give him a win against a guy whose credibility shouldn't be sullied by the likes of the question mark. That's just
well. And just finally on this, and again, letting me play Booker for a minute.
Sure.
This is a good time right here where you have one of those exhibition, where you have one of those time limit draw things.
Right.
Because now Colt doesn't lose anything. You get the question mark out of the TV title picture. You can't imagine that he's going to be the TV champion. And so you kill two birds with one stone on that. No one does a job. I'm not quite sure. Again, if the plans are for the question mark to be the television champion, then by all means, why not have more of a screw job type path for him, because it does match the character, it does match the story that he's in with Aaron Stevens. So again,
right.
There's I armchair booking right here, though I have booked some events for the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, so I know a little bit about how to put a show together.
Sure.
And I just think, I just think that they could have done better here, and that's okay. Again, we're still a young, and I say young for the oldest wrestling promotion in the world, but this is still a young endeavor with a team that's still trying to find its way. So I'll cut them some slack.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have all these big plans for the NWA, and in my head, it's like, of course they're going to exceed expectations. Of course they're going to grow, and all this stuff is going to happen. But we have to remember that this is year 2. We're entering year 3 of the NWA, of Billy Corgan's NWA.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be growing pains. There will be things that I don't like. There'll be things that you don't like. There'll be things that the greater audience won't like. But ultimately, it's going to happen one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I do have faith in Dave Lagana and Billy Corgan to put out a good product. I just wasn't happy with this match.
Yeah.
Overall, the taping, I think, was good. It was fine. The show was good.
Yeah.
But, again, I'm not happy with
the women's
Cabana.
match was good. Eli Drake promo was really good. I like the Ricky Starks match. As a whole, there was a lot to like about this. So, just kind of drop the ball there. Right there in the main.
So. Well, as always, we're coming up on an hour. So, Mr. Kevin Douglas, please let our listeners know, where can they find you on these interwebs?
Well, Kevin Douglas was my surname, so you can find me, or my wrestling name. You can definitely find me on YouTube. If you search Kevin Douglas Wrestling, there's tons of matches on there, from Wrestling Daniel Bryan or Wrestling on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. There's a lot there. You can also go to my YouTube channel for wrestling. It's Kevin Douglas 247.
Yes,
I believe.
Is the
right. Wrestling channel, yes. And if you want to keep up with me up to date, post wrestling, my shoot name is Kevin Frazier, so you can find me at Kevin Lee Frazier at Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook. So that's where I'm at right now.
Cool. So that's going to do it for us for this Christmas episode of the Alliance Guys podcast. That's airing about a week and a half later, but we have more content and more quality coming to you very, very soon, where we're going to be reviewing the next episode of the NWA Power. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jay Cal, and this has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. You can follow us on all social medias at the Alliance Blog, and we'll see you at the matches.
Hey.